Hello, hello, hello. Usually I say happy Friday, everybody, but it's not. It's Monday. So this is a special year-end edition of This Week with Mallory. We're going to actually be talking about last week, but I'm pretty sure last week today is pretty close to a copyright infringement. So I don't think we can go with that one. For those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. I am State Senator Mallory McMorrow, and we are live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is our regular check-in to provide you updates on what is happening in the state, what is happening in your state legislature, and then kind of sharing good news. But given that this is the end of the year, we had our last session day last week. We're doing something a little bit different this time and doing a catch up on what happened last week, as well as an end of the year wrap up. So we will go ahead and get into it. My partner over in Lansing, Liz, is going to be running our visual slideshow. Let's see if we can format this. Will it go side to side? No, it doesn't work. Let's try these things. Yeah, no, you get little me, no matter what we do. All right, so this week with Mallory, we're going to jump right into it. So if we can slide forward. First up, we want to talk about what we did this year. So this is the last time you will see me and Liz this year in 2021, but we are looking forward to a very exciting 2022. These coffee hours were actually one of the highlights of 2020 and 2021. You know, this was something that we started doing at the beginning of COVID when everybody was at home. We could no longer do our in-person coffee hours safely. But it's really grown. You know, during kind of the peak of the pandemic in 2020, we at one point had more than 900 people tuned into these coffee hours, and they've been great. You know, the views on them are really consistent. And what we've realized is this is just a really good casual way for us to connect with you regularly and reach a lot more people who don't typically have time or the ability to come out maybe to a coffee shop in district on a Monday during the workday. So we've kept these going. So this year we had more than 50 live coffee hours where you got to check in with me or my staff or my team. And it's something that we are going to keep moving forward with, bigger and better with more guests as we get into 2022. Next on our highlight reel, a lot of floor speeches. So one thing that has been a question a lot is, you know, what are you able to do as a member of the minority party? So here in Michigan, we have divided government. We have a Democratic governor, and we have a Republican-led House and Senate. And the majority party, so the Republican Party in this case, really controls the bills, the agenda, the committee structure. So one of the things that we are able to do, you know, being in the minority doesn't mean that you are powerless. But it means that it may not necessarily be legislation, but it is trying to change the conversation. And I think that's something that I'm really proud that we've been able to do. So I gave 21 floor speeches this year on a lot of issues. On my return from maternity leave, talking pretty openly about postpartum depression and then some of the struggles of being away and why paid leave is such an important issue, not only for physical recovery, but mental recovery, both for people who have had a child and people who are caring for family members. So, you know, really brought that issue to the Senate floor, talking very directly about gun violence in the wake of the Oxford shooting and consistently talking about COVID. You know, this is 2 years in now, and we are still facing it. You know, I was talking to friends and family members who have unfortunately changed plans again for this holiday season because of the spread of the Omicron variant. And it is exhausting that we're still in it, but a lot of what I'm able to do as a member of the minority party is really use my voice on behalf of you to try to change the conversation. So 21 floor speeches, and we're going to put together a YouTube playlist for you that we will share. Plug for you, by the way, if you sign up for our email newsletter, which let's see if I can drop this on top of this. Can I? Let's find out. There we go. more info, senatormcmorrow.com. Go ahead and sign up for our email newsletter, and we will send out that playlist where you can check out all of the floor speeches and a bunch of other stuff that we shared this year. So, in the spring and summer, when it was safe to get back out and see each other in person, especially when we're outside, we did something a little bit different. So rather than schedule kind of the same coffee hours that we usually do, which are typically in one place in the district and people come out, we tried something a little bit different. We called them precinct potlucks. And what we did was leverage local members of the community to say, hey, can you help us organize your neighborhood, your few blocks right around where you live, flyer the community, and then we will pop up in your neighborhood. So we popped up in driveways, backyards, community centers, outdoors. And what was really exciting about these events that we did throughout the summer is that we brought out new people who had maybe never been to a coffee hour, never come to any of our events, got a flyer on their door and wanted to meet me. So this was really exciting. And I think something that we are going to take into next year to kind of change up, making sure that we're popping up everywhere in the district and that we are in your backyard. Really, like everything, we're always trying to lower the barrier to entry, make it less intimidating to come to maybe an organized government event and just say, hey, your state senator is coming to your neighbor's house 1 block over, come on over and let's just chat. So this is great. I love doing this. Thank you to everybody who helped us organize it and for my team for helping facilitate. And we will see you next year, hopefully popping up in your neighborhood. Speaking of getting out in the community, you can see our team here, very excited, never low energy on Team McMorrow. We got out when the weather was warm to check in on you and make sure you have updates, resources, you know how to contact us, especially once everybody kind of went virtual. I know a lot of people didn't even realize that we do virtual coffee hours. I would talk to people on the street who said, oh, that's really cool that you do that. I didn't know about it. So we knocked on more than 4,000 doors this spring and summer to get out there and just share that information with you across our communities. So again, thank you to our team, to people who volunteered with us throughout the year to get out there in the community and just check in on you. And we had a lot of really great conversations. This year, I introduced 18 pieces of legislation, and something that is really exciting is we have now finally launched. This was something that came out of some of our conversations in the summer with people who said, how do I know what bills you've introduced and what you're working on? So on our website, which is new, we now have a page that you can easily find all of the bills I have introduced across my whole term. So there were 18 pieces of legislation introduced this year, but since 2019, there have been over 35 bills introduced covering a wide variety of topics. So we will make sure to drop that link for you so that you don't have to figure out how to navigate the Michigan Legislature website, which is a lot of steps to track a bill. We've centralized all of that so you can see what we've introduced, what the status of that bill is, and just make it easier for a lot of you. So thank you to everybody who made that request, who brought it up, and thank you to our comms team here in the Senate for helping make that happen on our website. Here's a little screenshot of it here. It's got this cool little drop down at the top so you can see what session, legislative session, whether it was last term or this term, and type, which is, a bill or a resolution. So you can kind of see here, it gives you the link. So on the left side, once you go to our website, is the link where you can actually go to the legislature website and see the original bill documents. You can download and read the whole bill if you want to, a PDF of it. It tells you the type, whether it's a resolution or a bill, a description. And then if you look at the description section, it will show you kind of a 1-sentence descriptor of what the bill is. And then it will say last action. So the last action for the top one was a resolution to urge Congress and the President of the United States to end the partial government shutdown. The action was 1/22/2019, referred to the Committee on Gov Ops. So you can track everything we've done and go from there. So that's an exciting thing that we've added for you. And again, thank you for everybody who requested that. Moving into particular legislation and topics that we have been hearing a lot of feedback on. So especially in the wake of the horrific shooting in Oxford at Oxford High. And frankly, throughout my entire term, we have had a lot of outreach from parents. I have had doctors reach out to me recently, residents, kids. A lot of people who are pushing us on this issue are high school kids themselves, kids the age of kids who are in Oxford and of our schools who have grown up their entire lives with school shootings and gun violence, who were born after Columbine. So we want to send this out. SafeMichigan.com is a website that we put together to highlight all of the legislation that we have introduced to try to address the issue of gun violence and gun violence prevention head on. I serve as a member of the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus. This was a caucus that was formed in 2016. It was started by Robert Wittenberg, who is now the Oakland County Treasurer, but was previously a rep that I shared territory with in Berkeley. And it is frustrating that so many of these bills, which we have worked on for years and years and years, haven't even gotten hearing. And they're really common sense bills to make sure that rights come with responsibilities, that we are ensuring that firearms do not get into the hands of the wrong people, that kids don't have access to firearms, that people who are suffering from depression or who are threatening suicide or immediate harm aren't getting access to firearms. So a lot of people have been asking, especially over the past few weeks, what we've done on this issue and what you can do to help. So we put this website together with our colleagues, safemichigan.com, so that you can see all of the legislation. The red flag legislation that I have introduced previously will be introduced early next year and be added to this website. And you can sign up for more information. So that will keep you up to date on actions you can take, how you can be helpful, and make sure these bills do get a hearing and that we do have robust conversations on preventing gun violence. All right. Let's see some other highlights. Constituent correspondence by the numbers. This is just, my team, absolute rock stars this year, especially throughout the pandemic. I don't think anybody working in any legislative office realized that our jobs would pivot so hard to helping people navigate unemployment, to helping people get appointments or service with the Secretary of State's office. It's been a hard 2 years, and my team really stepped up. I don't know how this happened, but somehow if you Google, Michigan Senate UIA, I think we're the first result that comes up. And I know a number of Facebook pages, people trying to get responses that our team and my office is consistently highlighted as a team that gets it done, which is a real honor, also a lot of responsibility. So we just wanted to highlight what my team has done this year. We've worked on more than 500 cases of department assistance. So this is UIA, Secretary of State, any state department where you're hitting a hurdle, that we've helped navigate more than 500 of those, processed more than 900 calls, and over 3,500 emails responded to on a myriad of issues. So it has been a busy year for sure. All right. And then budget highlights. This is a lot of what we do in the legislature is set the state budget for the year. And I was really proud this year, in addition to a budget that I was proud to support that did a lot of good for our state as a whole. I was able to help secure an additional more than $1 million in local budgetary items for our community. And here are just a few of them. $500,000 for the Innovation Hills Park expansion in Rochester Hills. And Mayor Barnett put together a great video with me to talk about this. So if you haven't seen that yet, we will include it in our 2021 YouTube year in review playlist. So check it out. It's great. If you haven't been up to Innovation Hills in Rochester Hills, go check it out. It is an amazing park. And especially after this past year, we know that people love getting outdoors, and was proud to invest in that. We got $300,000 for a sound study for a potential sound wall between Adams and 13 Mile. This has been an ongoing issue, and I know the community is continuing to be engaged on the concern about noise along I-75. So this seems like a small step, but it is really a big one because we have to fall under federal guidelines And having an additional sound study will give us the information we need to move forward. Also helped secure $80,000 for downtown infrastructure improvements in Clawson, potentially a crosswalk signal to make it safer for people when you're walking around downtown Clawson, and $50,000 for the Royal Oak Veterans Memorial Project up on Woodward and 13 Mile, which I've seen some renderings for. It's going to be really exciting that that project is finally moving forward. And then a big one, the tampon tax repeal bills were signed. This is legislation that I have been working on since taking office in 2019 for the past 3 years, but I am not the first. So Governor Whitmer, when she signed these bills, actually pointed out that she co-sponsored some of this legislation when she was in the Senate herself. And Winnie Brinks, my colleague here, who you can see behind the governor in a pink blazer, has been working on this for, I believe, 7 or 8 years. So this has been a long time coming. But it's just simply about tax fairness, and we were proud to finally get it done and get bills signed. And then some other things that we have been working on. So beyond bills and budget work, we do a lot of work just to try to troubleshoot for the community. So I know many of you and like myself were horrified of a death at the crosswalk in Birmingham, where there was a woman who was crossing a crosswalk, was admittedly against the signal, but a young driver, I think in her 20s, struck and killed this woman. And it's not the first time. We know that these infrastructure issues and these crosswalks can be potentially dangerous. So we have been working with the city of Birmingham, with MDOT, to try to expedite a solution to make this crosswalk safer, especially a community like Birmingham, where the city is split by Woodward Avenue, and we want half people who live on one side of Woodward be able to walk to the other side and get to downtown and take advantage of everything that Birmingham has to offer. Woodward is a unique challenge and a great thing to have in our district, because it's a state road that is operated by MDOT that does cross through much of our district and many of our communities. So we will continue to work on how we can improve the interaction between our communities and MDOT and the state, and make sure that it is not only a place that gets us from point A to point B, but that Woodward is developed in a way that is safe for our communities to take advantage of the amazing communities that we have on either side of it. And then this was great. You can see Noah here with me on the right. The downtown Centennial Commons Park in Royal Oak was dedicated this year, which it is awesome. If you haven't been down there yet, I know it's really cold. Actually, the dedication was super cold, but it is a beautiful space right in downtown Royal Oak. There's this great hill where kids can run up and down. It's very, kind of gives off a vibe of Shane Park in Birmingham, which is awesome to see. And it's going to be so beautiful when it comes together in the spring. So I was really proud to be a part of the dedication. It was an unbelievable surprise and honor to see my name and Representative Jim Ellison's name on the plaque at the park dedication. So Noah was pumped about the dedication. Kudos to Shakespeare in the Park, Royal Oak, who put on a little play about Royal Oak history that was great. Noah thought she was a part of the play and participated vocally loudly from her stroller while that was going on. So super awesome. I love to have more green space in downtown Royal Oak. Go check it out if you haven't yet, after when the snow melts. And then really the focus this year, and I was really proud to be nominated again for the second year in a row to be MIRS Democratic Legislator of the Year. MIRS is the Michigan Information Research Service. It is a Lansing political publication, super, super in-depth, but every year they nominate Democratic, Republican, and Legislator of the Year. So for 2 years running, I've been nominated for Democratic Legislator of the Year. And in the nomination this year, they spoke about how one of the important things that we were able to do, that I did, was talk very openly about giving birth. I am only the second senator in Michigan history to give birth while in office, the first being Stephanie Chang, who I currently serve with, and that only happened, a year or so ago. But The legislature, given that it is traditionally been represented by older people and a lot of men, doesn't actually have a family leave policy. So I made the decision, an important one, to take leave and talk very openly about that. And I think part of that, it was important for a reason. One of the things that has been really important for me is this idea that just because you're in the minority doesn't mean you're powerless. And part of the reason we were elected to these positions is to use our platform and use our voices and hopefully give voice to experience that many other people share. I had outreach from tons of women, moms, dads, families who have talked about how hard having a kid and navigating work and career and childcare and the experience of not knowing if you have leave, being afraid to ask for leave was. And a lot of people said they really appreciated the candor with this. I talked a lot about how, right after giving birth, we had outreach in my office from lobbyists asking for a meeting, 2 days after I gave birth, and was still physically not even anywhere near recovering, still bleeding, still very raw. It's traumatic in a good way, having birth. And then the experience of, especially during a pandemic, just really what it feels like. I was hit really hard with postpartum depression, talked openly about that. And I'm glad to see Erin Ryan, who, if you follow her podcast, Hysteria, she's got a newsletter that she put out. She also just had a child and talked really openly about how this is something that women particularly are told to just suck up and deal with. It's called the baby blues, and it's kind of got this cutesy name, but it's a really serious thing and it's hard. So that was really something that I was proud of, and of giving voice. And I think that sometimes being vulnerable is viewed as a weakness, but I personally think it's a strength. And part of the trust of being in these positions is being willing to have that openness to help change the conversation and hopefully give you a voice when you may not feel like you have one in a position of authority. So we have worked on legislation. We will continue to work on legislation to make paid leave available to more people, and not just for people who have given birth, but paid leave for any number of reasons. But on kind of the other end of this is MIRS also noted my position as the Democratic vice chair in the Senate Economic Development Committee. And I have been, I think some of my colleagues probably think I'm a thorn in their side, but I have been a very vocal critic of the state's traditional approach to economic development. And, Michigan needs to position ourselves. And I said this on the floor, and we can talk about the economic development package that just passed. But our goal as a state should be to get to a place where we no longer need to offer corporate tax incentives or these economic development packages to lure businesses to locate in the state of Michigan. I was floored a few years ago when a lobbyist came into my office and they were, advocating for tax credits for businesses, and flat out said to me, "Senator, we need these incentives because we don't have the talent in Michigan." And that is the reality that many businesses are looking at, even businesses who locate here. I know we have a number of businesses, even in our district, who are, auto suppliers, robotics manufacturers, maybe in the medical field, who say, we have six-figure jobs open right now. We cannot hire. We do not have people qualified to do these jobs. And that has been really my push, is it has to be a both and scenario. I am not naive enough to think that we can just eliminate incentives. There are certainly people who do think that. And there is definitely something valid there. There are multiple states who have eliminated this approach to economic development. But I think Michigan, we're not there yet. We have the second lowest drop in birth rate, just behind Illinois. So we have a very low birth rate. We have grown in the latest census, but not nearly at the rate of other Midwest states. So comparatively, we're actually kind of losing population. We're a rapidly aging state where we have more people, especially given the pandemic, where people accelerated their retirement. We have more people retiring than we have younger people coming into the workforce to take their place, which will prevent people from being able to downsize, from wanting to move to Michigan. So This is probably, Liz, is this a good place to talk about that bill? Because that was first on the agenda. All right. So jumping into, we had a few questions, and rightfully so, about a set of bills that passed the Senate, the full Senate last week, that sets up an economic development tool for the MEDC to assist companies who want to expand or locate in Michigan with two things: site development. So this is developing large areas of land, making sure they're prepped with infrastructure, water, energy, physical road infrastructure, and also potentially having a fund that has additional monies in it to help close a deal. So you may have seen the news. It was announced in the Wall Street Journal, actually the day after we voted on this, that GM has announced that they will be locating their next EV battery plant here in Michigan. And I know some people reached out right away and said, why are we putting, $1.4 billion into a package like this for a few companies when we should be investing in education, childcare, mental health, community development, transit? Public transit is a big one. And you're right. You're absolutely right. So my agreement, I've been working on this. I've been pushing really, really hard for 3 years. We are happy to share op-eds that I've written. I hammer questions in the Economic Development Committee about the fact that traditionally Michigan hasn't taken the hard steps of investing in the long-term structural things that we need to do. And my fear has always been we can't incentivize our way out of these shortcomings. We're not going to be able to incentivize our way out of the fact that we simply do not have enough younger people relocating to Michigan, staying in Michigan. So companies, when they're looking 10 years down the line, we don't have the talent pipeline. And that's just the reality. So, I know some people are like, why did this pass? Why did you vote for this? I understand that we have a short-term need that we have to fill right now. The reality is those long-term problems, they still exist. Those investments have to happen, but we're not going to see those investments pay off for, years, potentially decades, because long-term investments in transit, infrastructure, talent, mental health, that will pay off. And I fundamentally believe it will. And that has to be our long-term goal. My long-term goal when I think about economic development is we have to make the structural changes that are needed so that we no longer have to offer economic development tax incentive packages for businesses to locate here. I am okay with these if they are the last step needed to get over a hurdle. But if we are trying to throw so much money on the table that we are jumping all of these hurdles instead of investing in the long-term structural things, I don't support them. But right now, we are losing business to other states. It is criticized. This is a rare issue where you get kind of Mackinac Center libertarians and progressives aligned on an issue where it's a race to the bottom when you've got states offering more and more money instead of investing in people to lure businesses. So my agreement with my colleagues, many of my colleagues in the Senate, as well as a lot of people in the business community, executives themselves, business leaders from Michigan, many of these organizations that continue to push for these things, is that this has to be a first step, not the full solution. Because if this is everything, then we would have seen the Senate invest, $6-7 billion that we still have in federal dollars and put it all into this basket. I would not support that at all, because that doesn't do the long-term things that we need to do to get to a place where we no longer need to offer these incentives. But the reality is we're not there yet. So I have an agreement, and this was a good faith effort in my part to be a part of that solution and continue the conversation to get to a place where we are investing in those long-term structural things. And that will be my focus going into next year. Is I will be publishing a plan, a white paper, a document, a manifesto, whatever you want to call it. I'm working with a lot of really smart people who have done a lot of work in this space about what that would look like if we were to build it from scratch and do it again. And I will be pushing hard for that. And I promise you now, if those agreements don't come through and we are suddenly back to a place where we are not investing in transit, talent, education, mental health, community development, making Michigan a place where people want to live and stay and have kids and raise families and growing our workforce base, I am going to fight back hard. We cannot afford to not change our approach to this. But I do recognize, we are in a competitive place right now. We still have the shortcomings that we have. So that was, I felt confident that this is a step in the right direction. And many of my colleagues have agreed with me. So I'm looking forward to what is happening next year. And we will certainly keep you posted. This is my tent pole. But I think, these two things, and I'm really glad that MIRS brought up these two issues, because that's my entire drive, is that economic development is not just tax incentives for businesses. Economic development is family leave. Economic development is maybe looking at more flexible work schedules, maybe a 4-day work week, maybe hybrid, so that we have an ability for more people to get into the workforce. How are we eliminating barriers for people and supporting people? So all of these things together are economic development, and I will continue to make that our agenda. And that is a long time for me talking about that. So if there are any questions, happy to answer them. But otherwise, we can move on to what's next in the slideshow. All right, perfect. Well, that opens us up to Q&A. So I am going to close the slideshow, bring on Liz. Let me see if I can get our titles back, because that will be helpful. Perfect. And then okay, so if you have a question, reminder of how this works. If you've got a question, now is live Q&A. Be sure to type your name into your comment on whatever platform you're on, in case that's not obvious by your username. Please let us know what city you live in. We want to make sure we're answering constituent questions first, and then go ahead and fire away with your questions. And we've brought Liz on, who's our Director of Constituent Services, who will facilitate Q&A. We are both trying to wear a little bit of matching holiday decor colors as we head into the holiday season. So Liz, welcome. Happy Monday. Not happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Monday. Wow, weird.
What questions do we have this week?
Yeah, we actually had 2 questions from our Submit Your Question form that we send out with every coffee hour reminder. The first one was from Nathan from Royal Oak, but you kind of just went over it, so I might just reply to him in the comments and send it to him. But
perfect. And just for everybody watching, yeah. Nathan was asking about the economic development package. So yeah, and it's a fair question. Why are we putting money towards this if we're not investing the long-term structural thing? So hopefully we'll cut down. I wasn't as brief as I wanted to be, but cut down that clip. I'm sure this is going to be a question and my big priority going into next year. So Nathan, thank you for the question. It's an important one, and we will keep pushing. One of the things that I didn't mention, MIRS, when they talked about my nomination, was, really pointing out that I haven't been a shy member of the Economic Development Committee, and I've really been tough on people. I've asked a lot of tough questions, and that's my responsibility. My responsibility is representing the Democratic point of view of economic development, and I take that very, very seriously. So I am not here just to rubber stamp things. And we heard that from behind the scenes, our pressure on this did really help reshape the economic development tool as it was written, to make it more transparent, to make sure we have more clawback processes than other economic development tools like mega credits were in the past. So we've learned a lot, and I'm proud of what we were able to do to tighten that up and make it a tool that we have more control and oversight over.
All right, and then our second question, it's a little bit longer, but it's good context to the question they're asking, is Andrew from Clawson wants to know if there has been any discussion on potential vaccine mandates or incentives for getting vaccinated and or boosted now the Omicron variant has begun to spread in Michigan. They get alerts and emails and texts from work every time someone there gets tested positive, and has been steadily getting worse over the past month or so. Normally at least one person a day was bad enough, but now it's sometimes 4 to 5. Will there be any incentives to work with employers to mandate vaccinations on their own, since President Biden's mandate to OSHA is still working its way through the courts?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously with the Omicron variant, spreading like wildfire, not only in Michigan, but across the country now, it's definitely a concern. I think all of us remember there was like that 2 weeks in the summer where the CDC had come out and said, if you've gotten vaccinated, you're safe. You can take your mask off. You can go about your business as normal. And I share the exhaustion. Every time it feels like we're making progress, we take steps back. So I'm definitely watching the vaccine mandate on the federal level, which, to remind people, still gives options. The way that the federal administration presented that mandate was it either required vaccination or regular testing. And I can tell you, as somebody who's picked up a bunch of the at-home tests, it's a really easy habit to get into. And I think that's where we all have to get in the mindset of, at this point, we know what we need to do to be able to go about our daily lives, to travel, to go to work, to go out to places, and building that into our routines is going to be really important. On the state level, I am not aware yet of any plans for incentives. We did have an incentive for vaccination earlier in the year, where it was a lottery where people did win a significant amount of money when they showed their proof of vaccination. So I haven't heard anything from MDHHS if they're planning on anything to incentivize businesses to encourage vaccination, but it's certainly a request that we can pass on, especially as everybody is keeping an eye on Omicron. It is spreading very rapidly. And data is still pretty early, but it looks like early data is indicating that it is not as dangerous as potentially other variants, which may be a good sign, but I also don't want to kind of couch that yet. And certainly, the best thing we can do is preventative care. So we will pass on the recommendation and certainly report back if we hear anything from the state or MDHHS if they are planning on any kind of incentive for businesses to get there. Because I know there's been concerns about mandates versus incentivizing. Is this actually turning people off to potentially getting vaccinated? And I know the strongest thing we've been doing, I had a lot of conversations one-on-one with women, a lot of women over Instagram, like just one-on-one who were pregnant, concerned about vaccines. I shared, my own experience. And I know a number of people who got vaccinated from that. And I know that's what it's going to take. It's not going to be me, government official, kind of telling you what I think, but it's those personal conversations. So this is my shout out again. I've been pushing this a lot. If there's somebody you love, you care about, friend, family member who is on the fence, just talk to them about your experience, no judgment. And hopefully we can get through this and get to a place like I want to be, where we can just consistently go about our lives, which would be 2 years in. Liz, I'd love to see you in person and not,
right,
over camera more often.
Yeah. All right. Well, then on to the next question. Ryan from Facebook asks, what is the state doing to protect hospital workers? The Free Press put out an article about hospital violence. And unfortunately, Ryan says the other day he was attacked or assaulted by a patient.
Oh, God, Ryan, I am so sorry. That's horrible. And I know, attacks against healthcare workers, election officials. I mean, we are just seeing this on the rise of people who feel like it is their place to threaten, to attack. We've seen this at school board meetings, to school board members, to teachers. It's everywhere, and it's horrifying. So I have consistently co-sponsored legislation to increase penalties for attacks on healthcare workers. That legislation has always been bipartisan, hasn't gotten a hearing yet, and I can tell you why. Some of the concern is that physical attacks, assault are already illegal, on the books. So the concern that I've heard from people who are opposed to this legislation or feel like it may not be the right solution is this addressing the real issue, or is the issue that hospitals may be wary to report these crimes? Maybe hospitals are not calling the police when they do happen and reporting them and charging them appropriately. So that's something definitely worth looking into. And then it brings up the question, it's like, okay, well, if we're creating legislation specifically to up the penalty for physical attacks or assault on healthcare workers, why not teachers, elections? So it's sort of this thing. So I'm keeping an open mind. I will continue to co-sponsor the legislation and encourage that we take up a vote on it, because these questions are the things that I think are better served in a debate in committee to figure out the right solution. My stance on everything is, if there are questions or concerns about it, let's debate them. Let's bring them up. Let's have a hearing, rather than kind of negotiate against ourselves and not even put up a potential solution. Because then, Ryan, we see exactly what happens when we haven't forwarded a solution because some of my colleagues are worried about kind of the what ifs. That doesn't make you any safer at work, and that's not okay. So I'm going to continue to push for this in the new year. and we will keep you posted on any movement.
Okay, and then we have two questions from Jill from Royal Oak, and then those are the last two that I see right now if anyone wants to put their last minute questions in. She asked two questions. First being, what are your biggest priorities for 2022?
All right, biggest priorities for 2022, kind of talked about already, but I am going into the new year really taking that vow of, okay, I got on board, I supported these economic incentive bills and the funding behind it as a first step. And I am taking my role very seriously and coming into January and saying, here are the next steps. Traditionally, one of the things that I've realized 3 years into this job is when I've had business groups or some of my colleagues push back and say, well, if it's not these incentives, what would you do? I've kind of generally said, education, mental health, worker protections, all these sorts of things. But going into next year, I'm going to be really, really specific and explicit about it. So it is, writing out, it's these bills, it's going to cost this much, and this is my economic development plan. And push for it in the business community, push for it with CEOs, push for it with lobbyists who have promised that they will wield the influence that they have to make sure that this isn't it. So that's my biggest priority going into 2022 is continuing the conversation on economic development so that we reform the way we do it fundamentally. And I want to get to a place where, perfect example on how this can and should work, was Amazon HQ2. So some of you may remember years ago when Amazon was looking to locate their second headquarters. And, a second headquarters is a very different type of business than an Amazon warehouse, right? So I want to make sure that if we are incentivizing business growth, it is the type of business that is going to lead to business multipliers. So you can imagine if there's a tech headquarters, then we're also going to need to have more lawyers and restaurants and IP consultants and all the sorts of things that support those businesses. And there's a lot of research to back this up. But, the state of Michigan in, I believe it was 2016 or 2017 or whenever HQ2 was happening, the state of Michigan put up a $4 billion tax incentive to try to get Amazon to locate HQ2 in Detroit. Amazon came back and flat out said that Michigan did not even make the top 20 of where they were looking to locate, not because we didn't offer enough money, but they flat out said the top two reasons were lack of talent and lack of transit. Because if they're locating in Detroit and there are 50,000 people they were looking to hire, you would imagine a lot of people would want to live in Royal Oak and Clawson and Birmingham and all of our communities, but wouldn't have reliable transit to get to work. And a lot of people don't want to buy a car, pay for insurance, have to park your car for $20, $25 a day in Detroit and then commute back. So the state that won the Amazon HQ2 expansion was Virginia, and Northern Virginia offered a $800 million incentive, which is not an insignificant amount of money by any means. But they also created a new campus of Virginia Tech in Northern Virginia and expanded transit in Northern Virginia. So the way that I look at that is we're not fundamentally throwing out the idea of economic development the way we've done it, but if we are investing in growing our businesses and supporting it there, I want to make sure we're only doing that if that jumpstarts an investment in ourselves. Because I look at that, even if Amazon, let's say, leaves in 10 years or they shut down or whatever, Virginia is better off for that investment because there is a new campus of Virginia Tech and there's improved transit in that area. So if that's what we need to jumpstart some of the investments, I'm okay with that. The way that Michigan does economic development right now doesn't support that. We're not that flexible, but that's where I want to get to. I think that's the middle step, which is sort of this hybrid model. And then ideally, we get to a place where we don't need to incentivize, companies to come here at all. They should be clamoring over themselves to move to or expand in Michigan because it is, as we all know, the best state in the country and the best place to live and raise a family and get an education. And that's my long-term goal.
All right. And Jill kind of said it in the comments as well, but your statement kind of tails right into her second question, which is, if you're going to remain on the Economic Development Committee, what kind of plans do you have to improve working conditions for employees given the labor/skills shortage and in the wake of bad faith actions against union employees, for example, what's going on with the ongoing strike with Kellogg.
Yeah, Jill, it's perfect. And they all go together, right? So I think that is that explicit document that I'm looking to create, which includes things like eliminating non-compete agreements, which is something that we've seen. You know, it was traditionally something that was used for companies that had sensitive IP, like tech companies or auto companies would use non-compete agreements so that if you left a company or you were laid off, you couldn't go work for a competitor. But now we are seeing non-competes used in fast food, in retail, like all over the place. And it is a horrendous tactic to punish workers and make workers afraid to leave and go somewhere else. So that's one bill, for an example, that I'm going to put into my plan. Also, you know, including paid leave, including potentially making sure, you know, I think Michigan Reconnect is a great program that we have available now, that if you've started a post-secondary degree, that you have the ability to go finish your degree at a community college for free. We should expand that. You know, we need to hit on the goal of making 60% of our workforce educated with some form of a post-secondary certificate, whether that's an apprenticeship, you know, skilled trades training program, community college, or university. We've got to make college more affordable, and we have to make sure worker protections are in place. You know, I was very strong against efforts in the state this past year to eliminate liability for companies related to COVID. So there was a lot of effort in our economic development committee to waive that liability so that if a worker got COVID at work, that a company wouldn't be liable. That legislation ended up dying here in Michigan, and I was a huge part of that. So that's going to be my focus, which is we've done the kind of traditional, let's put money on the table to invest in sites and help expand companies here. That's great. That's great. The GM announced their new battery plant here. And I know there's a few other projects that are on the table that the MEDC thinks we're pretty close to getting. So we got to get to the what's next, which is worker protections, expanding education, mental health, all of that other stuff. So that's coming next year. And this is a good reminder. Kellogg's workers are still on strike, so don't buy Pop-Tarts.
Or Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its or Smart Start. There's a lot of good stuff. But, you know, I'm really proud of Michigan. There was a report that Kellogg's has now been attempting to hire permanent replacement workers for all of the unionized workers who are on strike. And it was reported that they had to start bringing in people from Ohio because nobody in Michigan would cross that picket line. So heck yes, Michigan, stand strong. We support Kellogg's workers on strike who are fighting for a fair contract. And I know in our family, we won't be buying any Kellogg's products until that passes.
All right. Jill has one last question. I'll just read it really quickly.
Yeah.
Will you be collaborating with union leaders functionally in any of your research, since labor unions have historically solidified improved working conditions both for union and non-union workers? We are seeing huge backslides in working conditions. For example, the deaths in the warehouse and the retail in Kentucky this past week.
Jill, absolutely. So I have been, one of my kind of big focus areas, which ties into all the economic development stuff, is electrification of vehicles, EVs, autonomous development. You know, what is the new version of our auto industry and how do we make sure that stays in Michigan? And even on things like new energy, solar, wind, a lot of the concern, and rightfully so, from labor is that many of the new energy companies are smaller and non-unionized. So yeah, I have been in regular conversation with AFL-CIO, with the UAW, and that's got to be a part of it moving forward is, you know, I'm not willing to sacrifice moving to clean energy, you know, attacking climate without protecting workers, because they have to go hand in hand. I mean, the reason to move towards clean energy, new auto industry mobility is for the benefit of the planet and for the benefit of people. And that has to include working conditions as well. So absolutely, labor has to be at the table, because you're right, we would not have the working conditions that we all have today without all of the efforts of labor unions historically. So we're not going to move forward without them on board.
All right. Well, that's our last question, I think, of 2021.
Last question. Jill, you got the last question of 2021. Ooh, all right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We hope you have happy holidays. be safe around your family. You know, I will say with our family, we've invested in a lot of rapid take-home tests, wearing masks. We're traveling from some other places, but at this point, we know how to do it safely. Hug your loved ones, and I hope you have a safe new year, and we will see you. Oh my gosh, can't believe 2022. Liz, is it too early to ask for New Year's resolutions that you're thinking about? Or are we not there yet? We can talk about it.
Well, now with student loans starting back up, kind of get myself more in a financial stability is my biggest 2022 resolution.
We'll circle back. Anybody watching, bring your New Year's resolutions and we will share them in our first live stream of 2022. So happy holidays, be safe, and we will see you in the new year.